Welcome back. I am so excited that you have joined me again in the Aligned Womb, Aligned You podcast. I'm Kate Nagai, and I am your host and womb guide on this journey. I'm here to help you to lean into the language of your menstrual cycle so that you can align yourself and awaken and activate to your womb wisdom to live the most inspired life. I am so excited to jump into this episode and to dive into today's topic. So let's get started. Welcome back, everyone. So this week I thought we would dive into a little bit back into the perimenopause talk, because this has been another thing that's been coming up in conversations with friends, with colleagues, at events lately, is the struggle of perimenopause and, just this really big transition in life where we can feel a little bit lost in what's happening with our body, with our hormones, how we're feeling. There's just a big change and transformation that's happening here. I have been so incredibly blessed to have some amazing teachers and to have been exposed to different teachings to help me really ground into this idea of embracing perimenopause and really embracing this change. I love the work that I've done in the Women's Hormone Health Certification Program and the work that I do as a women's hormone health practitioner and helping women understand their hormones and understanding what are the different hormones and how they impact the body and what we can do to really support and nourish the body in simple ways. And it's really impactful. It's really helpful because it is really getting to specific tactics that we can use to create drastic change in our hormones and in how we're feeling in our body. But the work that I've done as a menstrual cycle awareness coach and the training that I've done with menstrual cycle awareness, I think this is where this really becomes impactful, is in perimenopause. Because a lot of the times what we're experiencing in perimenopause is this shift that's giving us space to explore deeper realms of who we are, let's per se. What makes menstrual cycle awareness different than hormone health from a practitioner point of view, like the two different trainings that I've taken, is that menstrual cycle awareness is more of like that sacred, symbolic, maybe even you want to call it spiritual exploration of our identity, of who we are, of how our cycle and how our connection to self as women can create opportunity, can create shifts and changes in perception and how we feel in many circumstances. So as much as I love and I utilize daily the tools and the tactics that I have to keep my hormones in balance, it is the menstrual cycle awareness lens that really helps to anchor me in being who it is that I want to be and how to move through the different four versions of myself, to move through this idea that I am dynamic, that I'm not just one version, and to give so much self-love and compassion towards that. And that has been the biggest gift. So today, as we start to explore perimenopause and this rediscovering ourselves in this second half of our life, we're going to use the lens of this idea of the menstrual cycle awareness lens of, that sacred, symbolic, spiritual path of redefining who it is we are, deciding how we want to show up in the world. So I know that so many of us can feel really taken down by this time, but I am here to promise you this, that perimenopause is truly an upgrade in your system. Yes, it's chaotic. Yes, it's messy. Yes, it sometimes involves rage crying in your car, but it is also this chance to rebuild, to recreate a total life remodel design, to align with who you truly want to show up in. And I think we forget this, that, perimenopause starts potentially in our 40s, sometimes a little bit earlier in our late 30s, sometimes a little bit later in our later 40s. But it really is this pivotal moment of the second half of our life. And the way I kind of always look at it is that the first half of my life, I really spent trying to fit into roles that I was told would bring me joy and fulfillment. It was almost like the blueprint phase of my life, right? Graduate from high school, get good grades so you can get into university. Once you're in university, you're going to be building your career that's going to create the momentum through your life. From there, you'll find your perfect mate, and then from there, you'll find the perfect house, and from there, potentially you'll build a family, and you're always going to be happy and joyful. And this is so far from the truth. None of those things bring you joy. They can definitely enhance your life, but everything in life is messy, just like our hormones are. And so when we can use the first half of our cycle as kind of like this blueprint of that, it showed us the way that the world or society or our communities or our family lineage have all sold us on, that this would be the path that would bring us the most joy, prosperity, whatever word you want to fill in there. We can now use the second half of our cycle or second half of our life to create the life that we really want to live out, right? We have the groundwork now done. And as much as like that first half of our life brought us great lessons, it provided us with some amazing aspects. It really does. It's just that was not necessarily designed with us in mind. And that is because we didn't really know who we were either, to be honest. So this is why perimenopause can sometimes really feel like someone put our whole life in a snow globe and they just won't stop shaking it because our soul in the second half of our life has now decided that in perimenopause that everything's up for evaluation. Think of it almost like slipping on a pair of magical glasses that makes you not give a damn about anything that doesn't serve you anymore. And while that can be really liberating, it can also be really jarring if no one's warned us that this questioning, that this burn it all down urge or this need for change is entirely normal. And it's okay. It's actually really exciting because it brings so much opportunity for change to happen. So as we dive into perimenopause here in the second half of our life and, changing it all up, let's go just really quickly, a small crash course on our cyclical superpowers and how it plays into our perimenopause, because this is going to give us some good cues of what might be happening in that second half. So most of us have never really learned in health class that our menstrual cycle is really our secret life coach. It gives us 4 distinct phases every month that makes us 4 different women. We're 4 different versions all the time. Our follicular phase, which is I like to call the inner spring, is this fresh, energetic, let's do all the things kind of energy. It's when we come out of the gates running. Our ovulation phase, which is our inner summer, is the hollow social butterfly. During this phase, we're basically everyone's favorite extroverted person at the party. We're relaxed, we're social, and we're ready to party. And we're ready to play. And then there's our luteal phase, which is our autumn phase, our inner autumn phase. And here, this is where we often, are on the doorstep of PMS, and that we are really in this place of deep discernment. It can feel overwhelming in our luteal phase because you're in this full-on get stuff done mode, which is contributed because of your progesterone. But our progesterone is also reminding us to tap those brakes, asking you to slow down, to take care of yourself. And let's be honest, society does not like this, which is why we get slapped with that label as PMSing, or that we're hormonal, or that we're moody, when in fact, it's just that our body's asking for us to be somebody else. And then our menstrual phase is our inner winter phase. This is where we really need to do a self-care retreat. It's a time for rest, reflection, and to really dream about what's next for us. Where are we up-leveling in our next cycle? And here's the kicker. This monthly cycle mimics our entire life cycle. So that inner spring season that we had, that is really representative of our maiden years, those years in puberty, early 20s. Then we have our inner summer, which, really represents that of our empress or mothering years, which is our confident 30s. And then we go into our autumn phase, that quote unquote PMSing, moody, hormonal phase. That is really representative of this time of perimenopause, of discernment, of questioning things, of reevaluating things. And then we go into postmenopause, which is very similar to that of our cycle of our inner winter phase, where it's a time of reflection and renewal. And so this really helps us to kind of see how when we're feeling overwhelmed or when we're feeling like we're in that snow globe of perimenopause, that if you've struggled every month in your luteal phase, you might be struggling here, because in both of those realms, you're being asked to question. You're being asked to, to slow it down, to reevaluate, to make decisions, to define your life for how you want it to move forward, right? For that renewal process in postmenopause. So Kate Codrington, who wrote an amazing book called Second Spring, I highly recommend this. She describes perimenopause and menopause as having 3 stages. She calls them separation, surrender, and emergence. So this isn't looking at our whole cycle. This is just looking at, perimenopause and the transition of menopause, let's call it. So the first phase that she talks about is the separation phase. This is your Marie Kondo phase. It truly is Marie Kondoing your whole life. It is the longest and the hardest phase of perimenopause. Energetically, we're being pulled inwards to reflect and to question everything. But let's be honest, society does not train us for this. We have not been taught that it's okay to do this. So we resist. And it feels like we're losing ourselves here, when the truth actually is that we are losing parts of ourselves that don't align with who we truly want to be. So it's pretty obvious that impatience and irritability are totally normal here. Your soul is really holding up a billboard with flashing lights saying, this is not working. The life you're living is not working. And it's messy, but growth doesn't happen neatly. Let's be honest here. This phase invites us really to slow down, to listen to our body and release what no longer serves us. This is where I'm at right now in my perimenopause phase, is in this Marie Kondo phase. And because I have been using menstrual cycle awareness method for so many years, for a decade now, before I even got into more of the hormone health practitioner application, this is where I lived and thrived, was understanding my cycle in these 4 shifting energies. So for me, the separation phase, this Marie Kondoing phase of my perimenopause, it doesn't actually feel that scary. It actually feels really good, because it's like, yeah, you know what? Actually, I don't like that anymore. I'm not doing that anymore. And I'm okay with it. And it's also kind of comforting because I've kind of prepped my family and my husband for this for 10 years, right? Of us living out my 4 phases of my cycle every month. They've been trained. They know when are my blue days and my red days, and they know what I need in those ones. So when I go into this perimenopause phase right now, where I am just like, you know what, we're letting go of that because I don't care about it. We're letting go of this. This is what I want to do. I have no problem saying no. And I have people to really honor and respect that, because it is a practice I put in place. So just know that if you've struggled with boundaries, if you've struggled with relating to the energetic shifts or the mood shifts in your body, this time of this time of perimenopause is going to feel really, really hard. It's going to feel like a struggle until you find acceptance in it, until you actually find the beauty in it. And then you start to dive in, and then it can feel really exciting. The second phase of perimenopause that she talks about is the surrender phase. This is the deep dive, as she calls it. So this is deep menopause. This is like when you're on that doorstep of menopause and you're almost across that line. This stage is where we fully accept the changes that have been happening in our life, and we really begin to go into that healing process. It is about saying no to what drains you and yes to rest and self-nurturing. This is where the struggle that you've been going through starts to spin into that gold. A lot of times this is where we reflect of, are we willing to say no to what drains us? Are we willing to say yes to those things that light us up? Can we rest, without guilt? And can we trust ourselves if we let go into that struggle? And I think this deep dive into surrendering can be really empowering. And this usually happens as that hormonal roller coaster that we would see happening starts to like find that long path of like the shifts happening hormonally with estrogen and progesterone. Those are all pretty much like it's coming to the end now. This is where we're not seeing that roller coaster of hormones happening that we probably felt in the separation phase. And then the third phase that she talks about is the emergence phase. I like to believe the emergence phase is that early post-menopause phase. This is the time after we've rested and we've healed, that we're just allowing these new possibilities to bloom. When we've really asked ourselves, what is it that we want? And then we naturally drift into this emergence phase where these new ideas and possibilities begin to take shape. So this is when we start to live out our passions. It amazes me how many women that perhaps we look up to, they didn't come into the work they're doing or the power that they're in until this emergence phase, until perimenopause. So I think there's something really beautiful when we're on that rat race or the hustle, the hustle culture teaches us in our 20s and our 30s. When we get off that trajectory, that we can see that there's so much more waiting for us still. Our life does not end just because our period ends. And this is the beautiful thing about MCA or menstrual cycle awareness, is that it teaches us that there is a new cyclical rhythm evolving for us here. Now, the beautiful thing that I love about Kate Codrington's work is that she talks about, as we go through these 3 stages of perimenopause, when we come out of it, we actually get invited into this new cyclical rhythm. And this new cyclical rhythm, like we experience with our menstrual cycle of having a follicular phase, an ovulation, a luteal, a winter, so an inner spring, inner summer, inner fall, inner winter, we now begin to experience once again, but we, rather than having this on a weekly basis for a transition, we have this in a few years segment transition. So we go into a second life spring, meaning that this is where we come out of that emergence phase of perimenopause / early postmenopause, and we get a second chance to play with our cycles all over again. We have all the physical events we don't have any of the physical events like ovulation and menstruation dictating our phases. Instead, we now have these longer periods of time to really marinate in the energy. So we get the chance of going back into life. And I love that Kate Codrington puts it this way. She says that the second spring is this phase where we have these new ideas and possibilities that start taking shape, and they contain all the best qualities of our first life spring, which would have been our puberty, early 20s, including all the vulnerabilities, including that, sensation for experimentation. But this time around, we come in with a whole lot of wisdom gained from difficult life lessons learned and a big dose of I don't give a shit, which is really important, is that when we go into this post-menopause phase of our life and we go into the second spring, we get almost revived in our energy of being curious, of being like, what is it that I want in the rest of my life? What is it what I want to do? The playfulness comes back in, and all that experimentation with vulnerability all comes back in, but we just don't care what the outside world thinks anymore, which I, to be honest, am so excited for. And then just like that, we go after a few years to a decade hanging out here in this second spring energy, then we experience another second summer life season. So kind of like think about how you revisited your late 20s, early 30s. We experience that again in life in our second summer. And then we go through a second fall as well, where we might discern, we might question a little bit, and then we go through a second inner winter cycle. And this is late in life, where we know we only have a few more years, where we're, preparing for the end of life, where we're preparing to leave Earth's side, right? So we're still alive, we're still here, we're still in body, but this is where we just begin to really rest and reflect, right? And I think this is so beautiful that when we look at this is that, yes, the first half of our life, we're spent, practicing, rinsing and repeating these 4 seasons, these 4 inner experiences every month, right? So it's almost like it really kind of grounds in some pathways so that we can know what to expect, and we can then start to create senses of how to respond, because we're fluid and we're moving through with awareness about how we're feeling in our body. So that when we go through the second half of second half of our life, where all of a sudden we don't have a menstrual cycle or an ovulation and a period dictating this rhythm, we start to then create or use that memory of those pathways that were created in our body, those experiences, those felt senses, and we start to create it again in another bigger life cycle for the second half, where we get to take the experiences and the lessons that kept getting kind of ingrained into our memory body, and now we get to live it on this bigger experience. So it's really important, and I really want you to walk away from this episode of remembering that perimenopause, it's not something that's happening to you. It really is something that's happening for you. It's your body's way of saying, hey, let's do this life thing again, but this time we're going to do it on our own terms. So instead of dreading the chaos, maybe ask yourself, who is it that I want to step into in this second chance of my life? What am I ready to let go of? What really does not excite me? And how can I embrace this upgrade with grace and a little bit more humor of just starting to see these patterns? For instance, like I said, I'm in the early stages of perimenopause, but the other day when I was actually in my luteal phase, so the days before leading up to my period, and then I have the perimenopause on top of that, I went to back out of my driveway, but I opened the window rather than putting the car in reverse. And I remember just looking at my kids going, oh my gosh, mommy's brain is not working. Like I can't even remember like which button I'm supposed to push, right? And so we all had a really good laugh at it. And it's a way to click me back into the present moment of going, you're not supposed to be thinking and driving right now. You're just supposed to be driving like one task at a time, right? And so this is where we can bring that humor in, and we can actually start to laugh at ourselves and get some enjoyment out of the mishaps that can happen in perimenopause. So just know right now that if it feels like, and this is a common feeling, Dr. Carrie Jones said this in a seminar that I was part of not too long ago, that perimenopause kind of feels like you're living in a house that's in full renovations. And I really feel that. And so right now, if you feel like you're in a home that you know and you're familiar with, but yet it feels like it's under complete upgrade of renovations in every room and it's complete chaos, just remember that every beautiful space started with some kind of construction zone. So yes, it's messy. Yes, it's loud. Yes, it's sometimes downright annoying, but in the end, it is so worth it when we embrace this opportunity. So perimenopause is your chance to really redesign your life, to knock down those walls that you do not want anymore, to expand your view, and to really finally create a space that fits for you and what you want your life to look like. So I hope this feels a little bit more balancing. Maybe you feel a little bit more at ease. Maybe feel a little less crazy as you're going into these perimenopause phases. And remember that if you're in that first phase of separation, just keep thinking Marie Kondo, Marie Kondo, Marie Kondo. I don't know if anyone else is a big fan of her, but my gosh, I think that her and I should become best friends because I love her work. And when I thought of the separation phase as the Marie Kondo phase, it just was like, yes, I am looking at everything in my life, and each piece of my life I'm bringing close to me and asking, do I love this? And if I do, then it's still part of my world. If I'm like, no, you know what? You've served your purpose. You're gone. I release it and let it go. And I thank you for thank it for its time as well. Because every experience, is one that helped to build me up into who I am now, but it does not mean that I need to keep it going forward. So if you're in the separation phase, I see you. I understand the chaos that it can feel like, but try to reflect and discern, or take time for yourself to physically remove yourself from the chaos so that it's quiet for you. And then asking yourself, what is it that I need right now? What would make me feel more at ease? What is my life calling forward? And it can be scary to let go of things. It can be really knee-jerking hard. But I think this is why so many women in this phase change their careers, perhaps get divorced, their kids move out of home. There's so many things that happen here where it's now giving us space to go, this second time is for me. I'm not doing anything for anybody else. I'm doing this for me. What do I want? And it doesn't always have to be that you quit the job or that you leave your marriage. It could be that you have these bigger conversations of like, I don't like this role in this job anymore. I want more expansion. And you find a different role within that company. Or in your marriage, it might be that, you know what? The way that this has ran for the last 20 years doesn't feel nourishing to me anymore. We need change. We need adaptation. And there's so many professionals to help with that transition as well and that communication. But I think when people can see that we're up-leveling our life, either they choose to up-level with us, or it can be very scary for them. And that's when we have to make those hard choices. But this time doesn't have to be scary. This time it's opening doors for you to create this new second half of your life, which is going to be amazing. I think that was another element that really helped me during this process, is going and thinking like, I'm actually only at the halfway point right now in my life. I've only lived half of my life. So what do I want the second half of life to be? Like, I think sometimes we think we're getting close to 50 and we're like, oh my gosh, the end is near, retirement 60. And it's like, all of that is old stuff. That's like old dialogue that we were trained to believe is, you work till you're 60, then you go into retirement. You have to have enough money for retirement at 60, like all these things where I just feel like, no, this is like this beautiful time in a woman's life where in her 40s and her 50s, she gets to go, what do I want to do for the next half? And there's so many amazing women that work in their 60s and their 70s and are creating amazing things, like Louis Hay and the Hay House Productions, or publishing agency. Like, think of all the amazing books that go through that organization. And she did not create that until she was in her 60s. So this is the crazy thing, is that we have so many gifts yet that we haven't even started to tap into. And this is our time. So I hope this fills your cup today. I hope that you walk away feeling a little bit more empowered. And I hope that there was some like little key tidbits here that you're like, you know what, I'm going to remember that. I'm going to remember this is my Marie Kondo phase. I'm going to remember that this is the upgrade. I'm going to remember that right now what I'm feeling like is I'm in a construction zone, right? Whatever little phrase or tidbit was here, carry that with you in your back pocket to help you get through what can sometimes feel like a big struggle, but know that there is light on the other end. It will get better. So I hope you loved this episode. If you did, please like and share the episode, and we will see you again next week. Friends, have you had a chance to download my new free ebook? Maybe it's not you. The Truth on PMS and How You Can Take Back Control of Your Cycle is now available. This is truly a book that I think needs to be in the hands of every woman who struggles with the second half of their menstrual cycle. So if this is you, click on the link in the show notes and download your free copy today. And remember to subscribe to this podcast and share a review if you loved this episode. Until next time, remember, womb wisdom equals connection to self, which ultimately equals inspired living.